You say, oh my gosh, that bot ramp looks insane. How can you get to 100 million when autos are only at 15? You guys are nuts. You should reduce that. Well, the problem is we're all forgetting, and Elon said this on the call very clearly, that the complexity of making a bot is less than making a car. They should be able to make more bots than they can make car equivalents. So for every car they can probably make 20 bots, okay? A bot is about 3% the mass of a car. It's about 3% of the batteries. Yeah, there are some components that are more complex in a car, absolutely, but they should be able to mass produce those on the side, right? So now if we convert the vehicles into bot equivalents, now suddenly the blue bars, which are my bot deployments of 100 million, pale in comparison to the vehicles in bot terms. Okay, so if they're making 15 million vehicles by 2035, that's equivalent to 300 million bots.
Elon Musk revealed new information and made several bombshell statements about Tesla's plans for their humanoid bot Optimus. Today, we'll review the 12 major new details Elon said they'll be doing, from the current stage they're in, the production lines, the pricing, which will be a shocker for many, the overall market, and of course, the aggressive production ramp as examples. Our guest today will explain why he and others are actually underestimating how fast and how many bots Tesla will produce this year next. Yes, Elon himself said he's setting aspirational goals. And this is a big but. We're getting fooled by the large numbers. Cern is a chartered financial analyst who's currently running his own investment advisory firm called BrilliantAdvice, providing wealth management services. Welcome, Cern.
Hi, Herbert. Yeah, I think it's going to be important to really dig into what I think will be the most important product ever introduced.
Yeah, you've done amazing work. We've shown that a lot of your forecasts have been so well received by many CEOs of other bot companies, and that is actually in line so far with what we are hearing from Tesla. But today, or after the earnings call, Elon dropped just so many new information we hadn't heard before, including pricing, which, by the way, you were right again. We'll get there. Everyone else was so wrong in the pricing except for you. So let's get started here. Go ahead and share what you're going to talk about today.
Yeah, we're going to review Elon's sort of 12 major statements regarding Optimus on the earnings call. We'll go through one by one and then highlight some of the details with each one of them. And I think you've maybe got the first one teed up here with an audio from Elon.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's play what he actually said, but he's talking about the critical investments to such a scale that it's difficult to comprehend. Let's listen to what he says.
In manufacturing AI and robotics, that will bear immense fruit in the future. Immense. Like it's, in fact, to such a scale that it is difficult to comprehend. And I've said this before, and I'll stand by it. I see a path. I'm not saying it's an easy path, but I see a path to Tesla being the most valuable company in the world by far. Not even close. Like maybe several times more than. I mean, there is a path where Tesla is worth more than the next top 5 companies combined. There's a path to that. I mean, I think it's like an it's like a difficult path, but it is an achievable path. And that is overwhelmingly due to autonomous vehicles and autonomous humanoid robots. So our focus is actually building towards that. And that's what we're laying the ground. We lay the groundwork for that in 2024. We'll continue to lay the groundwork for that in 2025. In fact, more than lay the groundwork, actually, so we'll be building the structure. We're building the manufacturing lines, I'd like setting up for what I think will be an epic 2026 and a ridiculous 27 and 28. Ridiculously good. That is my prediction.
That's his prediction.
Yeah, he will boldly go where no other CEO will go, which makes it fun, I think, with Elon. Now, of course, the skeptic in all of us, likes to take his words with a grain of salt. But I think we should listen very carefully to what he's saying here, particularly about the manufacturing of bots.
So there's 2 parts, right? There's a manufacturing, which we're going to get to a lot more deeper, but you also want to talk about, first of all, AI and the ability to train the bots to do autonomous tasks. And there's one quote we'll get to later where we're going to really figure out which is ahead, which is behind, the manufacturing capabilities or autonomous capabilities. Yeah, let's get back to your deck here, and
Yeah. So the first quote there was about building, such scale that it's difficult to comprehend, making investments in AI in the infrastructure and manufacturing. And so if you look at the next image that was in their slide deck on the earnings call, this is the Cortex computing cluster, 50,000 GPU trading cluster.
Mhm.
How many companies have built this that are in the robotics space, right? And so there's not many, if any, that can match what Tesla is doing on this front. And so clearly Tesla is making the necessary investments, and Elon, as we'll discuss further, they're squarely focused on making whatever investment is necessary to ensure that humanoid robots become as capable as possible. And I think we're not hearing that from any other CEO of any other company in the world today. Now, NVIDIA certainly is well positioned to help other companies with their efforts. But still, there is no other company that we're aware of that's making this kind of investment. So then that leads us to his second comment about Tesla being worth more than the next top 5 companies combined. Right, and he talks about there being a path to that. Now, what's interesting about this is there's no time frame given on this. And of course, investors always go to the time frame. When is this going to happen? Is this going to be next year? Is this going to be 5 years? 2035? Who knows? What I maintain is that this will just be a signpost along the way.
What do you mean?
That they'll be worth more than the next in the top 5 companies, which today is about 15 trillion. Of course, that is also a moving target. Those companies aren't standing still either.
Mhm.
But when Tesla surpasses those companies, that's not necessarily the peak of their market value. It may continue to go up from there. And of course, what Elon has said about this has also changed. I think maybe about 8 months ago, he was talking about Tesla being worth more than Apple and Saudi Aramco combined, which at the time I think was $4 or $5 billion.
Mhm.
Now he's talking about 4 or 5 trillion.
4
Now he's
trillion.
talking about 15 trillion.
Mhm.
So it's a 3x increase in his prediction in just 8 or 9 months.
Several times more. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
path where Tesla's worth more than the next top 5 companies combined. Yeah, this is speaking to his forecast like you have with bots. This is bots. Is bots a product? And it sounds like it is at this point because they're actually producing it now in thousands of volume, and then tens of thousands next year per month. And then are you going to be able to sell it and so forth? And he's thinking at this point, this is a real product that's going to generate so much money that it's going to be worth more than 5 companies combined, the top 5.
Yeah. And the next slide actually has the table of the top 5.
Yeah.
So it includes Apple, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Amazon.
You calculated this would be 15 trillion. Okay.
The current sum of those is about 15 trillion. Yeah, give or take. And the next 5 there's on the right. Saudi Aramco's number 6 now. Meta, Tesla, number 8, TSMC, and Broadcom. So already there are many major AI players in this list, right? Whether it's Broadcom, TSMC, Tesla, Meta, and then the first 5, certainly major AI players in different ways. So this top 10 list of the world's largest companies already reflects AI in its early stages of development. So I don't disagree with Elon. It's just a question of when, and the 15 trillion again is just a signpost along the way in Tesla's journey. I don't think that that's necessarily where Tesla caps out at in terms of market value. Actually, I see that as more of just the beginning.
Yep. I mean,
again, not next year, but in the coming years.
Yeah, we want to see if Tesla can become the most valued company in the world, and of course, Apple and Nvidia keep trading spots. So we're talking about a 3.6, let's say $4 trillion, and that's the first signpost. Can we become that? And Right now, when you do your forecast for Tesla's based on your forecast of revenue, when do you think we get to 4 trillion?
I have a slide a little bit further in. Maybe we can
Okay.
take a look at that when
Save
we
it.
get there and answer that
Sounds good.
question. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
So the third comment was regarding training needs, and he was talking about that they'll need at least 10x the training needs for Optimus than what's needed for the car.
Right.
And the reason is that the humanoid robot is way more useful in a car. Right. And he's saying that the bot probably has 1,000 times more uses, right? And more complex things than a car. And he's saying the training doesn't necessarily scale by 1,000x, but maybe 10x. So this is also interesting when you hear people talk about, oh, I'll never pay $25,000 a year for Optimus. Okay. But you know what? You're paying 30, 40, 50, 60,000 for a car. Now, not per year, granted. But people are used to paying a lot of money for something that moves them from point A to point B, and that's pretty much all a car can do. Okay, so what really is a humanoid robot worth that is highly capable, that has, as Elon says, 1,000 times more uses than a car
Yeah.
moving you from A to B? Isn't that worth much more than a car, potentially? So that's also something worth thinking about in terms of the usual statement that we hear about, oh, people are never going to pay this much for a humanoid bot. You know what? If it's this capable, they're going to pay a lot. Yeah.
And the comment about the compute though, in order to train, this is something that again I keep repeating this, but you and I have had this conversation so many times already. A car has one use case. It drives you from one place to another place. A robot has unlimited use cases. Okay, fine. Maybe that's exaggeration. 1,000 use cases. And so the market and the earnings potential for that bot is so broad, it's so wide. It's not like the margins are so high too. That's a huge difference between a car versus a bot. It's unimaginable the potential use cases for a bot for all the different ways you want to use it. Right? It's not just one thing for one product anymore. Right? I'm buying my blow dryer to blow my hair, dry my hair.
Right.
Well, that's the one use case. But this one is like, this could actually blow my dry my hair too. I'll grab the blow. Anyways, okay. Well, let's keep going through here.
And
Yeah.
I guess the other use case, Herbert, for cars is a status symbol. I mean,
Right.
what's really the point of driving a Ferrari or Lamborghini? You can't really drive them to their limits on most roads. So it's a status symbol. And so what more of a status symbol is there than a highly capable humanoid robot?
Okay. But the important point he made here is that, okay, if we're going to be building a bot, not just a car, which we already have, and now we've already built full self-driving for the car, we'll need to consider the training needs for the bot, which is going to be, he says, 10 times what we have today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is very bullish for NVIDIA. So, here's one data point from a CEO saying we're going to be spending more on AI training, not less. Yeah. And of course, this will also include some of Tesla's own chips. All right. So he's talking about spending potentially, $500 billion. And he's not saying we're going to do this, right away or up front. We'll spend that as we need to, as the bot's capabilities expand and we need to expand our training. We'll spend the money. And then he's talking about how Optimus has the potential to be north of 10 trillion in revenue. Right. And again, these are numbers that you and I have talked about in the past. In my opinion, very achievable numbers. But yeah, they're going to be spending a lot of money on AI training. There's no doubt about that.
Can I'm going to play the video clip or the audio clip of Elon saying the slide 3 and slide 4 so we can all listen to it. I want the audience to pay very particular kind of attention to this statement. When he says this, it doesn't mean like Tesla's going to spend 500 billion in training compute, because we will obviously train Optimus to do enough tasks to match the output of Optimus bots. Some people are misinterpreting that, and there's two separate, multiple ways to interpret them. What does it mean when he says we will train Optimus to do enough tasks to meet the output of Optimus bots? What I took it to mean was, if I'm going to build 100,000 bots, is there enough jobs if it just does one use case of pick and place? But if I do 100,000, 200,000 bots, I better have additional training tasks it can do by then as I build it. And then of course, we're going to get to his statements about how many bots that they think they're going to make. He's talking about 10,000 bots per month next year. So by the time we get there, do we have enough training to be able to have enough training? But some people are thinking that there's another, kind of what does that mean? So let me play that, and then
For Optimus humanoid robot, are probably at least ultimately 10x what's needed for the car, at least to get to the full range of useful roles. You can say, like, how many different roles are there for a humanoid robot versus a car? A humanoid robot has probably 1,000 times more uses and more complex things than in a car. That doesn't mean the training scales by 1,000, but it's probably 10x. Now you can do this progressively, so it doesn't mean like Tesla is going to spend like $500 billion in training compute, because we will obviously train Optimus to do enough tasks to match the output of Optimus robots. And obviously the cost of training is dropping dramatically with time. So, but it is like, it's one of those things where I think long-term Optimus has the potential to be north of $10 trillion in revenue. Like, it's really bananas. So that you can obviously afford a lot of training compute in that situation. In fact, even $500 billion of training compute in that situation would be quite a good deal.
So what did you think, Cern, when he says, we will obviously train Optimus to do enough tasks to match the output of Optimus bots?
Yeah, my view on this is that over time, the capability of the bot will increase with further training. And they've got to be very careful about ramping up production in line with the bot's growing capability. Right. So think about it. There's only so much demand for $5 an hour workers and the capability that comes with a $5 an hour worker. There's more demand for somebody that's paid $10 an hour. There's more demand for somebody that's paid 15. There's more demand, et cetera, right? As you become more capable, the demand will only grow. And so Tesla needs to be careful as they ramp up their production to these what seems to be crazy high numbers. They need to make sure that the bot's capability is in lockstep with that.
Yeah.
And I think
Well,
that's what he's referring to.
So the question really is, okay, is Tesla specifically, which of these two is their biggest challenge? Is their biggest challenge training, which requires compute and AIs to advance, or is their biggest challenge manufacturing, which we already know is very difficult to create 100,000 bots, 1,000,000 bots? From what I read here, it sounds like to me that he's saying we'll talk about this, the aggressive plans of manufacturing. We're trying to get to 10,000 bots per month, 100,000, 50 to 100,000 next year. Then the following year, he said, 500% growth, right? But it's going to be like 1,000,000 the following year per year. That's what he said, from 50,000, 100,000 to then 500,000 to maybe 1,000,000 next year. He said 10x. He's very confident that Tesla's manufacturing capability will be able to do those numbers. And then therefore, what are they going to do? If all it can do is pick and place, it's not enough. When I make you 1,000,000 bots, you will need to have multiple use cases, and therefore will invest incrementally to grow the compute. I mean, we're not going to have to spend $500 billion now, but we're going to invest it incrementally. But we need to go lockstep with how many I produce. That's so that my understanding today is that that's actually the bigger problem. Like, he's feeling strong, confident that manufacturing is not going to be the challenge anymore. Like, how it always changes.
Yeah, my view on that is, I can envision him in a meeting, maybe with these different team leads, where you've got the AI guy saying what they're doing, what they're working on, and then Elon turning to the head of manufacturing and saying, "You guys better be ready. Like, these bots are capable. You better ramp up." Right. And then later turning back to the AI guy and saying, "Hey, don't fail us because we've got bots coming off the assembly line. You better make sure their brains are ready."
There you go.
Right, basically what we're talking about, right, is the brain part and the physical part, and both of those have to be kind of in the same place at the same time,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It
critical.
doesn't do you a whole lot of good to make 1,000,000 physical bodies and not have the brain ready.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's one way to think about it.
I love it. Okay, let's keep going. So much here. There's so many incredible points you're making here.
Yeah, so here's the path to 10 trillion in revenue. And so on the left side, the number of bots deployed, right? So if it's 10 million bots deployed and they're earning $100,000 a year per bot, again, not a stretch in a manufacturing environment. Manufacturers would actually happily pay a lot more than this, but that's $1 trillion. You get to 100 million bots deployed, and suddenly you're at 10 trillion on $100,000 a year of revenue.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, as you go across this table, the price, the annual revenue per bot drops to 75, 50, and then 25. And so you can see how many bots deployed you would need to get to hit the 10 trillion in revenue. Early on, it's very clear that Tesla is going to be able to command very high prices for the bot. There's a shortage of labor in many areas. And if you have a manufacturing plant that has 2 or 3 shifts, you're willing to pay a lot for the bot. Some of the numbers I've run, it's north of 200, even $300,000 for the bot. So there'll be a lot of demand at very high prices, even for a bot with fairly limited capabilities. Now, of course, as you get into the 50, 100 million bots deployed, you're going to need to make bots that are more capable so that the demand is there for them. And so this is a rough table in terms of where they would need to be, I think, at different price points to hit that 10 trillion in revenue.
I I don't know. This is a stretch for me. Sorry, Cern. I think that by the time you have 10 million bots deployed, I'm not sure at that point you'll be able to charge $100,000 per year.
We'll see. And it maybe if it's 75,000, then you'll see it's 750 billion in
Yeah.
revenue. If it's only 50, then it's half a trillion in revenue.
So are you going
Right.
to
So
get to
I'm
the
not
point?
suggesting that necessarily at 10 million they will get 100,000. I'm just showing on in a table format here the range of what the numbers are at the different price points.
Yeah. So are you going to get to the point when he said that pricing is market demand? Is that coming up?
Yeah, that's coming up towards the end when he said that. Yep.
Okay. The point is that maybe I'll bring it up now. We'll talk about it later. That he confirmed that when they sell these bots like next year, because it was in the context of when are you going to sell it to customers and what price? And he said we're going to sell to customers at the second half of next year, 2026, and it will be based on market demand, which is
Yep.
again a huge point because people have been pricing out as if they're going to sell it for $30,000 per year when market demand for this for next year and the following years will probably be 100,000 and higher. But I just think that by the time you get to even like 1 million or 2 million bots, I don't know what the number is, but I'm just feeling like 10 million bots. I don't know if it's going to be still 100,000 per year at that point.
There's a really curious thing that happens here, Herbert. The assumption with this table is that you move from the top left down towards the bottom right,
Hmm.
right? More bots deployed, lower prices.
Hmm.
But think about this. A bot that becomes more and more and more
Yeah.
capable over time
Yeah.
becomes more valuable and therefore worth more. Therefore, you can charge more for it because it can do everything. So you
Yeah.
might actually be moving from the top right of this chart
Yes.
towards the bottom left.
Yeah, that's a very good point because okay, this is the point, right? If you have 10 million bots, at that point, every bot can learn something, and as soon as one bot learns everything, everybody else learns everything else immediately, and therefore your bot has become 10 million tasks more tasks it can now do, and then, but the more you have, the more you've learned everything, and it just becomes a network effect or whatever the word is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
this is a tough one. I think we need to spend a lot of time bringing the other experts to really figure this one out. This is complicated.
It's a bit like maybe a cell phone, right? In the early days, they were expensive and couldn't do much.
Hmm.
And now the price is maybe about the same, but they can do a lot more. And so maybe that's what happens with the
Uh,
bots.
Yeah, that's interesting because the cell phone, everybody assumed the prices will fall down to like, $100. When today you could use, Tesla, Apple still sells it for like $700. How can they keep it at $700? Because it's got the app store, because it's got the music, it's got all these things that it just the value to you is just skyrocketed that they can still sell it to you, despite it becoming a commodity.
And the value of the bot will become that much greater, bigger than the value of the cell phone in terms of its change.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So the
'cause these are
pricing of the bot
tasks.
actually may be a lot stickier than we realize.
Okay, I think you convinced me a little bit. We gotta spend more time on that one.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So now he's starting to talk about, well, first of all, there's an important point here about how they are, the timing of all this is up in the air. And he admits that, hey, we're designing the train at the station in real time while also building the tracks, right? They're building the manufacturing process. They're building the capability to build bots. They're building the bot's brain. They're trying to figure this out as they go. They're trying to get the timing of all this right. Of course, this is not easy. So he says their internal plan is to build roughly 10,000 Optimus bots this year, right? And then he says, will we exceed? Probably not.
Mhm.
Will we make several thousand? Yes.
Mhm.
So I think that's our range. Let's call it 4,000 to 10,000 in 2025, right? And they'll be put in Tesla's factories doing work. So that's a good start. And you know what? It doesn't really matter whether it's 4,000 or 10,000 for this year. That's not really that material, right? So,
Mhm.
I think what's material is that we see them making progress, and they are. But whether it's this year, whether it's 10,000, I don't think that really matters. Obviously, the more the better, but this is hard.
Yeah, I think the big point here, first of all, is he's agreeing, right, that we don't know yet. This is going to be hard to. It's not. You can't just say bank it. We got it.
Yep.
Building it thousands. He's saying that no, we're building the train. It's like we're building a train, but we still need to build the tracks and we need to build the station. He's talking about I'm building a bot, which every part needs to be figured out how to build it, and we have to build the production line. We haven't done that ever before. It's a brand new product, and all that. It's all still being created, so we don't know. But I think the last sentence here, yes, I think, will we succeed in several thousand? Yes, very confident. I think we will. Will those several thousand be doing useful things by the end of the year? Yes, I'm confident they will be doing things. So he confirmed those two things.
Yep.
Yes, we will be able to build thousands. And yes, they will all be doing useful things, which means that this is a product as opposed to a prototype.
Right.
That's the big switch this year is now I'm going to prove to you that this is a product by the end of this year.
Yeah. And it's production version 1, and there'll be version 2, and then version 3, maybe the mass market one. All right. So here I wanted to take everybody through just kind of the evolution of my numbers. This was one of my original bot ramp charts.
Mm-hmm.
I forget exactly when I created this, but this was, at least 6 months old, if not longer. Probably over a year old. And I had just, 2024, 10 bots produced, and Tesla probably made more than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had for this year 1,000, going to 100, going to 1 million, going on out to 50 million by 2035.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then in early January, I think it was January 8th, if you go to the next slide, Elon had an interview. I think it was at CES, and he was talking about, the bot ramp. And so that caused me to update my numbers to 4,000 for 2025, up from 1. Okay. And then everything else was the same, except my 2035 number reached 100 million. I went from 50 million to 100 million. Okay. So I changed it on the front end, bumped it up, and I bumped up my estimates on the back end, and I left the middle years the same. Okay. So with the information that he shared on the analyst call,
well, before that though, what he said here was he said we'll build several thousand this year. So you put 4,000, and if all goes well, we'll 10x that the following year. He did say 50,000 to 100,000 was his actual words, wasn't it?
Yep,
And so 50,000, but you put the 100,000. So that's a
I
bit
did.
more on the positive. And then he did say that the following year will 10x it too. And he said 500,000. But he didn't say 1 million. But theoretically, when he said we'll 10x and then he did say 50 to 100,000, he means to say 500,000 to 1 million. But I'm just
Yep,
pointing out that in this scenario, you did actually pick the higher end.
I did. I think he's sandbagging those numbers. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I'll share why in a minute. Okay, so we'll come back to all this. We're kind of building towards some things here in a minute. And then he's talking about ramp, right? So he's saying those optimists at use in Tesla factories for production design 1 will inform how we change for production design 2, which we expect to launch next year. That's 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal is to run Optimus production faster than maybe anything that has ever been ramped, meaning like aspirationally an order of magnitude ramp per year. Okay. Now he says we may end up with only half of an order of magnitude per year, so a 5x instead of 10x. That's the kind of growth we're talking about. It doesn't take very many years before we're making 100 million of these things a year. If you go up by, let's say, a factor of 5x per year. So here we have the CEO of one of the premier manufacturing companies in the world saying very clearly that they plan to ramp this thing like we've never seen before. And then here we sit when we put these numbers together, right? And we sandbag them. We back off a little bit. We reduce our numbers because, Elon's always late. This may be a big mistake in this regard. Now, I do think that the timeline in terms of when this starts to ramp, I think, is an open question because, again, they're building the tracks, building the station, building the train at the same time. But I think we're making a mistake if we ignore what he's saying here about the magnitude of this ramp. And I'll share why here in a second.
Yeah, he actually sandbagged it already, right? Because he was saying we're gonna aspirationally we're gonna produce this faster than anything that's ever been done before, an order of magnitude ramp per year. We aspire to an order of magnitude. Perhaps we only end up with half an order of magnitude, and then he already cut it in half, and then still says, but even if you go up, let's say just a factor of 5x instead of 10x per year, that's where you could still be. It's still going to be pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yep. And then he goes on in the next one, right? Insane. Not 50% growth, 500%. Big growth numbers, right? And then he says we need to develop a new supply chain. It's entirely new technology. There's nothing off the shelf to use. They tried to use existing motors, actuators, and sensors. Nothing worked for our humanoid robot at any price. So they've had to build everything from scratch, right? And he's talking about it's the most sophisticated hand that has ever been made before by far. Optimus will be able to play the piano and be able to thread a needle, right? This is a level of precision no one has been able to achieve. And so it's really something special. And my prediction is that long-term Optimus will be overwhelmingly the value of the company, right? And this is what we've been saying now for quite a while, that when we run the numbers on the future of Optimus, everything else that Tesla is doing is critically important. But from a financial perspective, they pale in comparison to the value that Optimus could create at scale. The next page is a visual of that, Herbert, from one of our November videos. Optimus is the blue part of that chart, right? And we're showing here the potential business value of Tesla out in the early 2030s, up over $100 trillion.
$100
Right.
trillion. Yeah.
The
So
right
right
side
now,
of this chart's 120 trillion.
we're now at 1.2 trillion, something like that. And it's now 2025. You can, because you had to add robotaxi and bots, the auto business, which is in yellow, the energy business, which is that light blue. Wish you could pick a different color for that, but that's okay. You got basically they're so low, like literally maybe 1% or less of the 150 billion trillion by that point. This is the blue, and then the red is robotaxi.
Right. And so if you look at the $15 trillion marker when they surpass the market cap of those 5 companies as they stand today, that is not too far off potentially, depending on when this ramp starts for both robotaxi and bot. Robotaxi may
Whoa.
be more important early on, but then quickly the bot ramp overwhelms that.
So, if how are you? Do you feel like you're conservative? Do you feel like you're being optimistic here? Because basically, what I'm reading here, 15 trillion could happen by 2028. That's in 3 years.
It all depends on the ramp, and let's dive into that a little bit. We're coming up to it. Slide 8 here, the eighth point, and he's talking about it's rapidly evolving in a good direction, right? Team is doing a fantastic job. We really have, I think, but the best team. I hope he feels that way, right? That's important. We also have all the other ingredients necessary because you need a great battery pack, you need great power electronics, you need great charging capability, you need great communications, the Wi-Fi and cellular connectivity. And of course, you need real world AI and then the ability to scale that production to huge levels. So you have to design for manufacturing. And that's key, right? Everything they do when they design it, they're designing it to be manufactured at scale, right? And he's saying that these other companies are missing this and they're missing the ability to scale manufacturing to millions of units a year. So this is one of Tesla's great advantages.
Yeah. This is great list because right now, almost all of us are saying that they're missing the ability to the AI and they're missing manufacturing. But it's more than that. He spent this whole paragraph here is talking about more than just manufacturing AI. He's talking about charging and battery packs and the of course the team and the connect communication. There's just so many things that you need to build into the bot as you're building it. So they're not like just parts you can grab anywhere.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think we'll learn over time some of the innovations that they're making along the way here, not just in the AI part, not just in the way the bot's constructed, but all these other components. Just like
Like
we've seen, for example, the new technology in the Cybertruck and how that's different from the other vehicles.
right, 48-volt. Like the
Yep.
battery pack is an example, right? So whereas all the others, when they make millions of bots, like hundreds of millions of bots, where are they going to get their batteries? They're going to outsource it. They're going to get another battery maker to make it for them. But Tesla, it's all connected. It's all part. Like you
Yep.
say, they might do structural battery, meaning the biceps of the arms all has batteries. The neck has batteries. They could do things like that. That just
Yep. All right. So now they're talking about Optimus being used internally at Tesla because we obviously can easily use several thousand humanoid robots at Tesla, right? For I think the most boring and annoying tasks, right? Tasks that no one wants to do, where we have to beg people to do this task. And he says the robots are totally happy to do the boring and dangerous repetitive tasks no humans want to do. Although the robots don't have their voices yet, so we'll see how they feel once they test them. Anyway, so he goes on and just said, Tesla's going to make use of the robots first. And of course, that's a great place, great training ground. Tesla has a huge variety of different things they can ask the bots to do. Whereas other bot makers that just make bots maybe don't have this opportunity. They have to find partners to work with and deal with all the complexity of that. Where for Tesla, this part of the process is very straightforward.
I think Tesla could train the task based on the needs of their factory much faster than another bot company can for another company, because they can work they're one company as opposed to two, trying to figure out, well, one bot company says, I wanted to do this task and that's easy, that's a next task for us to do, but the factory says, well, that's not as important to us, that's not our priority this quarter.
Yep.
Whatever. So that's leads me to the question, like, if you map the ramp and we're talking 100,000 bots next year, 50 to 100,000 bots next year, are there enough jobs for Tesla to put in there? Now, he did say we'll sell it to customers the second half of next year, but when does that flip? When does it flip? Or, how many, we can easily use several thousand bots. I can see that.
Yeah.
let's say maximum 5,000 bots per factory. That's 20,000 bots maximum, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think there's that, but there's also for training purposes. So, you might actually create some jobs for bots for training purposes and testing and so on, right?
Yeah, but we're talking
So
about
it's
20,000 bots, at some point.
well,
Yeah,
that should be plenty for training and testing and everything. Absolutely. If you go too much beyond that, then you've got a problem to manage them all. But
mhm,
yeah, I mean, and they were certainly talking about, and I think there's a quote in here about when they start selling them to other companies.
mhm.
We'll get to that, but Tesla has a lot of capacity to use bots in their own
Certainly for the
manufacturing
first
processes.
first year and maybe the next year. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Tesla, doesn't just make cars. There's the battery storage devices, Megapack and PowerPack and a Powerwall and so on. So plenty of opportunities for diverse training for the bots.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So now he's talking about production version 2, which I think launches sometime next year. I'd like it to be the beginning of next year, 2026, but maybe more like the middle of next year. Okay. And then he says, with a production line that's designed for in the order of 10,000 units a month versus 1,000 units a month. So when you're designing a production line for 1,000 units a month, it takes you a while to actually reach anywhere close to 1,000 units a month.
Right.
For any given production output, it takes a while to actually reach its potential. The current line we're designing is for roughly 1,000 units a month of Optimus robots. The next line would be for 10,000 units a month. The line after that would be for 100,000 units a month, which is 1.2 million robots a year.
Ca- are you going to say something? Because I want to.
Go ahead.
For him to say that we are aspirationally shooting for 10,000 bots this year, then he goes, well, how is the likelihood we'll have 10,000 by the end of December? Not likely, but certainly several thousand, right? 2,000 or whatever. They give him several thousand, right? But in order to hit 10,000 aspirationally, and they are still, it takes a ramp to get to 1,000 per month. It needed to be ready by 1,000 a month needs to be hit by February.
Yep.
Which means that the production line might have been already in production, the line itself, last year. And am I right?
Well, they've been designing the bot and designing the production line all along. So
Right.
I think you're not far off. Yeah.
Yeah. He's saying by the end of February, if you can get me to roughly 1,000 bucks a month already by February, then we'll hit 10,000. Likelihood, no.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So now let's get into why I think we're all wrong about our bot ramp. So Farzad did a nice video yesterday, and he highlighted here on the left what Elon wants. And these were Farzad's interpretation of Elon's ramp, right? 10,000 bots this year, 50,000 next year, 500 in 2027, 5 million in 28, and 50 million in 2029.
Mhm.
Okay. And then Farzad said, well, Elon tends to overestimate and so on. Here's what Elon, probably gets.
Right.
And he mapped that out. And that's fine. He's being conservative. Right. And I'm not quibbling with what Farzad has done here. In fact, my number is actually not that different than his. Okay. But I think we're both wrong. So if you go to the next page, this is a visual of the pink is what Elon wants, according to Farzad. The yellow, as Farzad's what Elon gets, and the blue is my ramp. And you can see that the Elon gets ramp and mine are very similar. The slope actually is almost the same.
Mhm.
And maybe they would be exactly the same place if Farzad had continued that.
Mhm.
I think the yellow and the blue lines are wrong. Okay, and I'll show you why here now. So when we look at bot deployments versus auto deliveries or auto production, the blue line there is again my numbers. So going out to 100 million production by 2035. Those numbers look crazy high when you compare them against the estimation for auto production for Tesla, auto deliveries 15 million per year by 2035.
Mhm.
So the green bars there start at 2.1 million for this year and go to 15 million. And so you say, oh my gosh, that bot ramp looks insane. How can you get to 100 million when
Mhm.
autos are only at 15?
Mhm.
You guys are nuts. You should reduce that. Well, the problem is we're all forgetting, and Elon said this on the call very clearly, that the complexity of making a bot is less than making a car. They should be able to make more bots than they can make car equivalents. So if you look at the next slide, Herbert, for every car they make, they can probably make 20 bots. Okay. A bot is about 3% the mass of a car. It's about 3% of the batteries. Yeah, there are some components that are more complex in a car, absolutely, but they should be able to mass produce those on the side, right? So now if we convert the vehicles into bot equivalents, now suddenly the blue bars, which are my bot deployments of 100 million,
Mhm.
pale in comparison to the vehicles in bot terms.
Wow. Yep.
Okay, so if they're making 15 million bots vehicles by
Vehicles
2035, that's
times
equivalent to 300 million bots.
if you use the 20 to 1.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you've already brought it down. This 20 to 1, let's talk about that a little bit. 20 to 1. Uh, so you're saying that for every car that Tesla makes, they should be able to make 20 bots because of the complexity difference. And I think we all agree, right? It's not going to be 1 to 1. That's for sure.
right.
For every time I make a car, all the effort that it makes to create a car is going to be like the same amount of effort to create one bot. That's ridiculous. Okay, everybody knows that. And I think in terms of weight difference, it's 30 to 1 in terms of the weight. And then Elon did say though that the complexity there's a lot more complexity on by surface area for a bot than it is for a car. So
Mhm.
you've already taken the 30 to 1 and brought it down to 20 to 1. And so actually I think 20 to 1 is a good a good guess. I think that would be more closer to 21 than would that say 5 to 1 or 30 to 1. It could
Yeah.
actually even be 30 to 1. I think eventually once they figured out the actuators and everything like that, it's like cell phones. How many cell phones can you produce for every one car that you can produce?
Right.
It's like unbelievable how many you can do because
That's right.
but is it complicated, complex? Absolutely. A cell phone is micro processing and a micro architecture. But
And Apple's
wow,
contract manufacturers make over 200 million a year. Right.
boom. And
So,
every CEO has said this, hasn't they? CEO of humanoid bot company said a humanoid bot is more akin to a mobile phone than it is a car.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not suggesting that Tesla ramps to 300 million,
Mhm.
but I am suggesting that that is entirely possible should the situation warrant it. If the demand is there, if the bots are capable enough, then Tesla over this time period should be able to ramp up to something like that. If they can ramp the auto business from 2 million to 15 million, then they should be able to ramp the bot manufacturing line over time to something very equivalent if they want to, if they need to. So for us to estimate that they're going to produce 100 million per year, I don't think that's a crazy high number. In fact, I think they could easily go beyond that if the situation warrants it. And I think that's where the error that Farzad and I are making. We are underestimating Tesla's capability to ramp this. Now, it may not ramp as early as what Elon is suggesting.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a year or two off because for whatever reason, supply chain issues or just development challenges that they encounter. Fine. But long term, the ramp shouldn't have any limit to it with respect to autos if you put those two together. Okay. So on the next slide is
Mm.
taking Farzad's numbers and again comparing it to autos. And the chart on the far right is the same one we just saw a second ago. The auto deliveries times 20 versus his bot numbers. His bots are barely ramping compared to autos. In fact, autos are ramping faster than his bot numbers.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying and answer there is that, well, they've been building cars for since 2000, or since since 2010. Yeah. So 12 years, 14 years, 15 years
Yeah.
now. They've got 4 factories. So that's a much different.
Yes, but I don't think it will take nearly as long to ramp bots up to that equivalent if they wanted to, if they needed to. Right. The constraint isn't necessarily time. Now, yes, they would need to build more factories to produce that number of bots. Absolutely. Right. That may delay things by a year. How long is it going to take to build a bot factory? Bot factories are not going to be like gigafactories. You won't
Yes.
need the massive size and the equipment that you need in a
Yeah.
gigafactory to make a bot factory.
That's a very, very good point right there.
Right. You
I
could
mean,
actually probably build it around the corner in your neighborhood store if you wanted to.
yeah, you can take an empty space. You
Yeah.
don't need those industrial arms. You don't need those cages. You don't need, massive spaces to move this massive car through the production line. It can all be done like you can have one factory for the actuators, one factory, and these are like small parts this big,
Yep.
right?
And the actual
Okay.
assembly of the bots, and this is where it's going to be crazy. y-
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that Tesla's working on bots assembling other bots.
Well,
I mean, they
remember
have to
that?
be because that's just too cool. They can't,
Yeah. Remember
they
that
can't
very
not.
first video? Yeah. The
Yeah.
first video they ever dropped was a human Optimus bot,
Yeah.
very, old prototype, using a drill and working on another bot just
Yeah.
for fun. But yeah.
So, the next line again is just comparing Farzad and I to and Elon's wants to that green line, which is the auto production ramp from 2 million to 15 million expressed in bot terms. So those numbers times 20.
Hmm.
And there's the ramp that we expect there.
Hmm.
And yet the line that Farzad and I have a lower slope, a lower growth rate
And
than the
just
auto
cars.
growth. That makes no sense.
You're right.
We're wrong.
Hmm.
Elon's wants looks crazy, but
Hmm.
that's more like the slope that we're going to get at some point. Now, maybe that won't happen in 28 and 29. Maybe
Yeah.
that happens a year or two later.
Yeah.
But the slope of that is, I believe, more accurate.
If anything, it's going to be higher than this. If
Yeah.
you can get from 2 million cars to 15 million cars, and then you've turned into a bot equivalent, then you should be able to at least match that slope. So as a by 20, it'd be nice for you to put your blue at 2030, let's say, and then starts taking that slope, and then it goes boom,
Yeah.
higher than this slope.
Yeah. Now, that's when we started getting into the demand side of the equation.
Right.
So I don't think actually the issue here is going to be capacity or manufacturing capacity. I think the issue actually is more likely to be the demand.
Yeah.
And even there, I don't think there's much of a problem. But I think that's actually the greater issue than the manufacturing capacity.
I mean, I was going to ask you, what is the demand? And you've got Elon saying, I can see 1 billion bots. I can see 8 billion bots, 1 bot per human on
Yeah.
Earth. And I can see 2 billion bots. He keeps changing it, but let's say 8 billion. So that's total bots. And so here we're only talking 200 million, 300 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, for those that like to see the numbers, the next page is the table of numbers that go behind the chart.
Mhm.
So Elon's wants, Elon gets, my ramp, the ramp in autos, and again, plug in your own numbers here,
Mhm.
and 20x that to get the bot equivalents of autos. Compare the slopes of those lines and see where you are. I think everybody is making the same mistake that Farzad and I are making with this. Yeah. All right. So statement number 11. Elon says, and I think probably with version 2, it's a very rough guess because there's so much uncertainty here. Very rough guess that we start delivering Optimus robots to companies that are outside of Tesla in maybe the second half of next year. Now, to me, those are likely going to be Tesla suppliers
Mhm.
because that further enhances Tesla's cost competitiveness.
Mhm.
But if I was the CEO of a large company, I would be calling Elon to get my name on
Mhm.
that list.
Mhm.
right now. And if you know any CEOs of large companies, tell them to call Elon right now. You do not want to be number 125 on that list.
Hmm.
You're going to be at a massive competitive disadvantage. Yep. So he's saying, such is the exponential ramp that it'll go from no one's receiving humanoid robots to these things coming out like crazy. Again, Elon is telling us in no uncertain terms what their plans are to ramp this.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, in terms of the benefit to Tesla internally, I did some rough numbers on that on the next slide. Looking at a factory with, say, there's 20,000 employees, and
Yeah.
at three different wage rates. Let's say it's $20 an hour, 30 or 40.
Hmm.
The effective wage is more like 30 to 60. And so the annual labor cost per person ranges then between 58,000 and 115 to
Hmm.
Tesla. So in a 20,000 person factory, that's 1.2 billion to 2.3 billion of labor costs in that factory. It's a massive number. Let's say a quarter of those people were replaced by bots.
That's where my
Okay.
5,000 comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, here's your 5,000. And again, maybe it's not in one factory, maybe it's across all of Tesla's factories. However you want to look at this, it's fine. And I'm saying that you could probably replace, over time with highly capable robots, 3.5 people for every one bot. And that's assuming the bots work, 3 shifts. So maybe initially it's not this much, but let's assume these bots are highly capable and can do that. They can replace that many people. Then you're looking at labor cost savings of 250 million to $500 million. And on a vehicle factory capacity, let's say of 500,000, you're looking at between $500 and $1,000 per vehicle saved,
Wow. Yeah.
right?
It's
I
big.
think Jeff Lutz would be excited about that.
That's huge.
And this is just in Tesla's factory. It doesn't
That's just
include the
labor.
savings then you might get from your suppliers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because,
Now, the
yeah. Go
biggest
ahead.
thing I think I would quibble with here is my number of bots needed, the 3.5 to 1. That may be more 1-for-1 initially. So these numbers may be a little overstated in the early part of this. But as these bots become more capable and can do everything a human can do, which again is coming in the next few years, then I think these numbers are pretty accurate. And if this is the impact that Tesla is seeing, run these same numbers for other companies. It's staggering.
It's
And the
material.
result is the
Yeah.
lower the margin you have on your business, the higher the
Hmm.
labor costs are as a percent of your costs,
Hmm.
the bigger the opportunity.
Hmm.
The low margin companies suddenly have an exciting opportunity to make themselves much more profitable. The lower the margin, the worse cost competitive you are, the bigger the opportunity this represents.
Hmm. So typically, labor is the most biggest expense for most companies, and I think at the end of the day, my thinking is that you're actually very conservative. It's cost more than the dollar per hour, as we know, fully loaded, lawsuits,
Mhm.
training, room required, lunch.
Yeah.
Just if you add up everything, computers, all these things that you need to, support a employee. It's a lot more. HR departments.
Yeah. Management. Yeah. Yeah. It's
I love this.
the cost savings opportunity, I think, is pretty staggering.
Yeah. I mean, you've heard Elon say every dollar matters, and we're doing everything we can to squeeze a dollar, because even like a dollar per part or something like that, when you're making 2 million, when you're making 5 million, when you make 20 million, that's huge. So $500 per vehicle is big. That's a huge.
Somebody made an estimate about what the cost savings were for the vehicles driving themselves off the assembly line to the
Yes,
loading dock.
$7 or what?
I
Mhm.
saw
Per vehicle?
$25 per vehicle.
Per vehicle? Yeah. Which is pretty
So,
good. Yep.
yeah, it adds
Decent.
up. But
Yeah.
this is, much higher than that potentially.
Hmm.
Again, in the early years, the opportunity isn't there because the bots just aren't that capable yet.
Sure.
And that is the key thing. As the bots become more and more capable, they become more and more valuable. I'll say this over and over again.
Mhm.
That's the key thing, right? Because often I get criticism and say, well, the bots, they can only pick and place. That
Mhm.
you can't replace very many people doing that. Well, that's where they are today. It's not where they're going to be in 5 years, right? Um, so then the final bullet point, Herbert, the final statement, um, Elon's talking about demand. We're always going to be in a we can't enough situation. Demand will not be a problem even at a high price. And then, like, once we're at a steady state above 1 million units a year, I think I'm confident at 1 million units a year, that production cost of Optimus will be less than $20,000. That's not the price of Optimus, that's the cost to make. And then he's talking about if you compare the complexity of Optimus to the complexity of a car, so just the total mass and the complexity of Optimus is much less than a car. So I would expect that at similar volumes to say the Model Y, which is over 1 million units a year, you'd see Optimus be, I don't know, half the cost or something like
Oh,
that,
so obvious. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Again, these are things that we were saying months ago. And he says, what price of Optimus is a different matter. And then he says the price of Optimus will be set by the market demand.
It
Right
is so
now,
obvious. Yeah.
long term, yeah, prices will come way down because this is a
Long term.
massive deflationary force in the economy. But initially, prices will be super high.
There's this belief by so many people that 2 years from now, the competition's going to be there and this becomes a commodity and they can only sell it for $30,000 and they make it for 20,000 and they make a, $10,000 margin, but they'll sell it for people to buy it at $30,000. That's the general, if you look at everybody's estimates, it's like 30,000 bucks a year. It's like, what? No, the first 2 years, I can see $100,000 or more.
Yeah. 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 And then the next slide, again, I'll make this point again and again. The demand will absolutely skyrocket as capability grows. The demand is on an exponential curve as capabilities improve.
Mhm.
This is the mother of all exponential curves. As they add capability to the bot, as the bot becomes more able to do more and more and more tasks, that unlocks more and more demand. So we could actually see a situation where the value, because the value of the bot's increasing, the price actually could also increase.
Yeah.
Because now instead of just replacing that $10 or $15 an hour worker, you can replace 20, 30, 40, $50 an hour workers. And what's that worth? That's worth a lot of money. So this is going to be different than anything I think we've ever seen in so many ways. But from an
Yeah.
economic standpoint, perhaps as well. But then, of course, as they scale production to some crazy number, 100 million plus, yes, prices will come down. Yeah.
It is unbelievable. It's even just small numbers. Let's say the 10,000th bot is made. It comes off a production line. As soon as it's finished, it starts walking on its own. It walks to wherever it needs to walk to, right? Then it gets delivered to wherever it goes needs to be delivered to,
Hmm.
or maybe it gets into a car, an automated car, and it drives itself. It comes out and it has that 10,000 as it's born is able to do unlimited tasks that what the previous 10,000 had already learned. So it can be a cook. It can cook whatever the other 10,000 learned. It can be a gardener. It can be all these things, right? So it's like, assuming the training can be done.
Yeah.
And my point being that it's just, uh, you've got a bot that theoretically could do every task that's been learned already by that point.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
what you could do is you could have different tiered pricing.
Yeah.
You could have the early bots that have certain capabilities at one price level. And then as the new ones are made, with higher capabilities, they are now at a higher price level. If you don't update the software on these ones, they stay at that tier. But in
I think it's
theory,
going
you
to be
could
a
update
yeah.
their software and they could all be at the new tier.
It's a task marketplace is what I would see. You
Yeah.
would charge by demand, by task. If a certain task, say, I don't know, automotive repair versus cutting bananas, maybe you want automotive repair. Well, then you pay for that
Pay
task.
more. Yeah.
And maybe there's going to be a certain price point that you would charge. Tesla could charge you for that task, that skill.
Yeah. At some point, I think those wage rates flatten because if it's no longer done by humans, then the cost of preparing bananas versus automotive repair may be very similar because it's just a
Yeah.
time thing and it's just as easy for the bot to do one versus the other.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's different for humans, so there's a wage difference. But for robotic labor, we may see a flattening of those wage rates, so to speak, over
Yep.
time.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
All right. The final thing, Herbert, is the market opportunity of Tesla
thank
versus
you.
Apple.
Thank you. I've been asking you for this.
And this is
Thank you.
really rough. And I'm sorry, it's been a busy week, so I haven't maybe put quite as much thought into this as this deserves. But we'll start with this. Let's look at Apple, and we're just going to focus on the PC and the phone opportunity. PCs, let's say they sell 30 million a year at $1,500. You keep it for 5 years, so Apple makes $1,500 from you in a 5-year period. Okay, that's $45 billion, right? And the annual revenue works out to $9 billion. The smartphone, just the hardware only, 300 million phones a year. They're not selling that many now, but let's just say it's 300 at some point. At $1,000 a phone, the 5-year cost, if you replace it every 2.5 years, is $2,000, right? And their revenue is 600 billion, and the annual revenue is 120 billion. And now I'm adding a software plus AI component. They've got the App Store and then future AI revenues. Let's just say that they've got an installed base of 1.5 billion phones,
Mm-hmm.
and they get $100 a month from you on average for these services.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's $6,000 over a 5-year period that you're paying.
Mm-hmm.
For Apple, that's $9 trillion over 5 years, or $1.8 trillion on an annual basis.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a $2 trillion opportunity for Apple
Per
year
revenue, per year.
revenue.
Yep. And they're the biggest company on earth right now. Yep.
Yep. So they've got a $2 trillion opportunity right now. And right now, I think they're doing, what is it, 500, maybe a bit more than 500 billion in revenue. Okay. So that's a nice opportunity for them.
4x.
4x. Let's look at Tesla, just the humanoid bot. 100 million units a year. Let's say you're paying $20,000.
Wait, well, when did we get to this? When did we get to 100 million?
No time frame. Let's just say it's 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay. $20,000 per year you're paying. Over 5 years, you're paying 100. The revenue to Tesla is 10 trillion. There's a 10 trillion number.
Yeah.
Over a 5-year period. 2 trillion a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But that's the annual production of 100 million. So if you look at an installed base at some point of 1.5 billion, just sort of saying apples to apples, 1.5 billion phones, 1.5 billion bots. So yeah, it would take a while to get here. So that's not 7 years for this number,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's say it might be 10 years or 12 years from now. That's a $30 trillion a year opportunity for Tesla in revenue per year. That's a 16x what Apple's opportunity is. Again, this is really rough. Don't skewer me for this, but just directionally, such is the nature, I think, of the humanoid bot market, because you can command a much higher price for humanoid bots. Maybe 20,000 isn't the magic number. Maybe it's higher. Maybe it's lower. Right? Some consumers obviously cannot afford $20,000 a year. The point that I have made, though, is that right now we spend a lot of money per year on transportation. If you don't buy a car or lease a vehicle and just pay for it as robotaxi as a service, that's going to free up $5,000 to $10,000 a year for people. They could apply that savings towards humanoid bots, which is a whole lot more useful than just moving you from point A to point B. It can do much more for you. It actually may actually help you increase your income because the bot can work for you.
Yeah.
Or it can free up your time so you can work. So you don't have to clean your house and do your dishes and laundry. That frees up your time to do more work. Or you can put the bot to work and have it make things for you that you could then sell, potentially.
Hmm.
So this 20,000 is not necessarily a net cost to people. There may be other savings that they can use to apply towards this number. And for many people, $20,000, it would make a lot of sense because the value of their freed up time is worth more than that. Anyway, that's just a
Yeah,
rough
it's rough.
first pass.
If
Yeah.
you added software and AI to Apple, there should be a software AI. There should be a task marketplace. This $20,000 doesn't mean that's it. Tesla's going to make service revenue like no other for bots.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is robots as a service, Herbert, and not selling it, right? So it's just $20,000 a year in revenue that you paid to Tesla for use of the robot to do whatever you want it to do. But you're right, there
Okay,
may be different tiers for different things.
good point. It's not going to
Certainly,
be
it's worth
hardware
more to
plus.
a manufacturer than 20,000 a year. Many manufacturers would happily pay
Yeah.
north of $100,000, $200,000 a year for these bots.
Hmm.
Okay, and some consumers may only want to pay 5,000 for the work that they want to have the bot do. So I think 20,000 actually is a fairly conservative number when you factor in all the different customers.
Hmm.
But I think the point is, and whether it's 16x or 10x or 5x Apple, the opportunity with just humanoid robots is that large for Tesla vis-a-vis what the opportunity is for Apple.
It's bigger. Yeah.
Now, clearly, Apple should get into the robotic space, but will they? I don't know.
Well, they're not a manufacturer. So
No.
they tried to build a car, but it's just challenges. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's a real shame for Apple, but Tesla is well on our way. By the way, one thing we haven't talked about is different form factors of bots.
Mhm.
This is humanoid bots. Humanoid bots, all we've ever talked about, but there are, I don't know what the number is, 10, 20, 30 times more kinds of bots that you can create, different kinds of, the market for bot, we call it bot animals, but right, R2D2s,
Well,
cleaning bots.
we saw Tesla roll out a new bot today,
Yeah.
the robotaxi cleaning bot,
Yeah. Although that's
right?
right.
And that may well be a new product that anybody can buy to clean their vehicle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or not. Maybe Tesla will just use that for robotaxi and that's it.
Yeah.
But yes, there will be plenty of other bots for highly specialized tasks.
And because it's intelligent, and it understands this environment. It understands you can change the environment by throwing different kinds of garbage in there, or whatever, and it'll know what to do. And you could talk to it maybe, and it'll talk to you back. It can adapt to anything it can get into, right? Anyways, just these guys are manufacturing. They're going to create, and then they're going to create different kinds of products. It's just an explosion of products. Versus a cell phone is one product. That's it.
And the
they
cell
have
phone,
AirPods.
the cell phone was an amazing product.
The product, the most incredible product that's ever been made. And
that's right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a whole level above that. As Elon said, 1,000 different uses or more for a humanoid robot.
Fantastic. Appreciate you doing this, Cern. This is great because, again, that earnings call, he dropped many new information. You collected it. We went through each one of them. And that thing that you discovered, I think I was initially very skeptical, and then you've converted me. Like, there is something about the ability that Tesla could actually produce what they're saying. Maybe he's still not what Elon's saying he wants, but more likely closer to what he says than what any of us have ever, even you have said, because of the points you made about it. That makes sense. Yeah.
If they can make that many cars, then they'll be perfectly capable of making the equivalent number of bots.
Exactly.
In bot equivalent terms.
If not even more. That's
not even more.
Yep. But we're sandbagging so much.
Yeah.
But you're saying, I think we've sandbagged way too much more. And here's an example of why. So it's good baseline. Thank you, Cern. Again, if you guys want to know this information, he publishes this on a regular basis on his X account. Check him out there at Cern Basher. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Herbert.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.